Doop 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 Daily Solutions Podcast.
So, welcome to the show. I'm Graham.
My name is Ashkan.
And today's question is, why do some people swear by test strips and other people recommend against them?
Okay, so let's just say, I guess, what is out there other than test strips real fast.
Let's say what a test strip is. Might be good. So we're talking about testing your water quality here. And a test strip is a little strip that has pads on the end with chemicals in them that you dip in there to get a reading.
Yeah, they come in like little bottles usually, and on the back of the bottle is like...
Let's talk about what a bottle is for a second.
It's like a container that you put stuff into. But it's they have like a color chart on the back of the bottle, so you dip it in the liquid and you pull it out, and you compare the color to what it says on the bottle, and that gives you your reading. And they make test strips for, pretty much everything, I guess, really. pH, alkalinity,
pregnancy,
chlorine, bromine, in a sense, right?
It is. That's why I wasn't joking.
So yeah, there's lots of test strips out there, and if they're probably like the most common thing people know about, just because it's what people use if you have like a pool at home or a hot tub at home or something. Like people in residential settings, that's what they're using. They're using test strips, and they're kind of like the most straightforward thing you could have, right? It's literally like dip this in, look at the color. So you see a lot of test strips out there, and then you hear about people saying maybe you shouldn't be using test strips.
Yeah, and the kind of thought behind that is that it's one of the most subjective ways to test your kind of water quality or your water metrics. And subjective in the sense that once you dip it in the water and hold it out, and you're now gauging your visual acuity against the colors on these tabs and the color on the bottle. And there's kind of a saying in the water aquatic health world of, is your pH not high enough and you're using a test strip? Just hold it out of the water for another couple seconds. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Which is it keeps changing color even after you take it out of the water. So there is this sense where if you're not hitting it at the exact right time, in the exact right light, and your eyes are good, then there's a lot of variability there.
So yeah, I mean that's and also often test strips are not as accurate just by themselves to begin with as some of these other things we'll talk about in a second. So it's kind of all those things combined make it for not being like the most reliable thing. Like, they're not the most, precise tools to begin with, and then on top of that, there's a lot of subjectivity in terms of your color perception, the lighting in the room, things like that. And there's some subjectivity in terms of how long you are waiting to actually decide, now I'm taking this reading. So all those things put together make it kind of just a much more of like a rough testing, regimen than like some of the other stuff. And so what's the other stuff? They have these other, test kits that have basically often just like bottles of these reagents, as they call them, that are just chemicals that do a lot of the same stuff. They change colors. A lot of this is about color changing. So you'll take a sample of your water, for example, and dip, squirt 10 drops of some bottle in there, and it'll turn the whole thing green. And then you'll put 5 drops of something else in there, and that'll turn it a different color. And then you have to put 10 more drops, or you count how many drops it takes to turn the liquid back to clear. That's kind of some ways that you see this. And every test gets kind of different, and they have their own slightly different ways and colors and, number of things you're dropping in. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of that. You're either getting to some sort of endpoint that's a lot clearer than testing a color against something. And sometimes it is actually testing a color, right? Like some of these nicer test kits, you'll put something in and you'll compare the color the liquid turns to a color on the side of a bottle or something like that.
Especially, I feel like I've seen that a lot with those ones where you crush the tablets into the water and wait for it to change color.
Yeah.
So there's still a little bit of kind of visual checking in that case,
and
too.
People, you hear the same complaints about those. The testing itself, I think, is more accurate to begin with, but it still is the same problem of human beings having, kind of imprecise color, especially relative to each other. Some people just see slightly different colors, or the color temperature in the room that you're in can adjust for things like that. So, the newer stuff that you see coming out is kind of electronic devices that basically do that.
Yeah,
They
also
just-
look at the color.
They just
and
look at the
compare it
color
for you.
Yeah, they're just better at looking
You're
at
just
color
using
than you
robot
are.
eyes instead of your own fallible human eyes.
Yeah, it is pretty much when you hear about like electronic testing systems, you often think they're, something that's like sampling the water in some crazy electronic way, but often they're just literally shooting a beam of light into water and then like deciding the color on their own, which, is better. Like it's a more precise way, or at least a more reliable or consistent way of getting a reading from something than doing it yourself.
And a little word of warning is that we've had just a ton of trouble getting anything that's kind of robotic driven like that to actually read, like a spectrometer to read in
Right.
float tanks, just because the density of the salt water affects the light beams going through it in a way that you don't have for
Yeah,
regular
perhaps
water.
that, or perhaps just the chemistry to begin with was not working correctly.
Yeah, who
and
knows? We
it
don't
wasn't-
actually know. This
It
is all
wasn't the colors
conjecture.
it was expecting. Yeah, so I don't know. You'll hear different things out there too. A lot of places won't even allow you to use test strips in a commercial setting. They'll require that you use some sort of actual reagent test kit. And then we hear of some places where like test strips is what they recommend, but that's way more seldom than we hear the other way, that you have to use a test kit. And at the end of the day, probably something to factor in is whatever testing thing your health department is using. Like if you have someone coming in and inspecting your float tank, like I'd buy the exact same test kit the inspectors are coming in to test with. And more times than not, that's one of these kind of reagent test kits than it is a test strip sort of situation.
For sure. So, we could keep going forever on water testing stuff. It gets to be a very deep, dark rabbit hole. But for now, hopefully that at least explains some of the difference between test strips and what some of the other devices are doing. And why people maybe are a little more wary of test strips. Again, like even given the subjective nature of a lot of these tests, test strips do seem to be on that far end of subjectivity. There's kind of nothing more subjective than test strips, other than just staring at your float tank solution and
taking
just
a
kind of
guess,
like,
like-
yeah, exactly, going on your hunch. So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Today's. It's a daily show, today's episode. And as always, you can submit your own ideas and questions on our website at floatanksolutions.com/podcast.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
It's good to have
Have
you
a
here.
good night. Have a
Bye.
good night.
Bye.